He was a billionaire, used to power, beauty, and taking what he wanted. She was a small-town girl, pure, gentle, and full of dreams no one ever cared to hear. But one night, everything changed. He saw the blood, realized she had never given herself to anyone before. And instead of taking her, he walked away. What he did next, no man, no billionaire, no one would have done. This is not just a love story. This is a story of respect, truth, and a romance that changed an entire town. Watch till the end. It'll break your heart and rebuild it. Mark Watson had everything a man could dream of. Private jets that waited for his call, luxury cars lined like trophies in his marble garage, and a Mountain View mansion so grand it echoed even when he whispered. His name was on the covers of magazines, whispered in boardrooms, chased by gold diggers, and feared by competitors. In the world of money, Mark was a king. But kings can be lonely. He was only 32, but his soul felt 60. Every morning began the same. Coffee served in silence, meetings filled with fake smiles, deals signed with empty satisfaction. His phone rang non-stop, but not a single voice on the other end ever asked, "Are you okay?" He had tried dating, of course. Models, actresses, influencers, women who knew how to smile for cameras but not how to love. They loved the lifestyle, not the man. The more Mark gave, the more they wanted, until he stopped giving altogether. At night, he sat by the massive fireplace, staring into the flames like they held secrets. The silence was heavy. He had money, but not meaning. He had success, but not softness. People called him lucky. Mark called himself lost. One rainy evening, as thunder echoed in the sky, Mark looked out his window and felt something strange tug at him. Not pain, not fear, just emptiness, an ache that no luxury could fix. "I need to get away," he said aloud, to no one. By morning, he told his assistant to clear his calendar. No meetings, no interviews, no press, no people. He packed a single leather duffel bag, no staff, no driver, just himself. He drove for hours through winding Colorado roads, where trees stood like giants and birds flew freely above. The city lights faded behind him, and for once he felt like a man, not a brand. He passed small towns, ignored road signs, and followed instinct. Finally, he found it. A hidden little village with no skyscrapers, no crowds, and no one who knew his name. He pulled into a rustic cabin resort that smelled of pine wood and fresh air. It wasn't fancy, but it was real. The kind of place where strangers nodded kindly and the stars actually showed up at night. He checked in under a false name, Matt Wills. He didn't want anyone treating him like a billionaire, just a man seeking peace. The cabin was simple. One bed, a fireplace, a small kitchen, no butlers, no chefs, no security, just the sound of wind brushing against the trees and the smell of earth after rain. He stood by the window that night, looking at the mountains in the distance. They were raw, untouched, wild. He admired that. They didn't need approval. They didn't need applause. Mark wondered if he could ever be like that again, free. He cooked himself dinner, which turned out terribly. He laughed at how out of practice he was with anything normal. Maybe I need to learn how to live again, he thought. The next morning, he walked into town. No one looked at him twice. No one whispered his name. For once, he was invisible. And strangely, he liked it. He found a small diner at the corner of Main Street. It had chipped paint, handwritten menus, and the smell of butter and hope. Inside, people smiled at one another like they actually cared. He took a seat in the corner booth, away from the window. A waitress came over with a soft smile and a notepad. Her name tag read Jennifer. He didn't know it yet, but his entire world was about to change. The bell above the diner door jingled softly as Mark stepped inside for the first time. The place smelled like warm butter, black coffee, and something comforting he couldn't name. There was nothing special about the decor: red leather booths, faded wallpaper, and a jukebox that hadn't worked in years. But the energy felt different. He took a seat in the far corner, next to a dusty window that looked out over Main Street. That's when she appeared. She moved with quiet grace, wearing a simple uniform and a soft ponytail tied with a ribbon. Her skin had a natural glow, untouched by filters or makeup. Her name tag said Jennifer, but Mark couldn't stop staring at her eyes, green like a forest after the rain, full of mystery, stories, and strength. "Good morning, Coffee?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm, like someone who didn't let the world shake her. "Yes, please," he replied, surprised by how grounded she seemed. Most people either fawned over him or faked a smile. She was neither impressed nor intimidated. He waited for the moment when she might recognize him, Mark Watson, billionaire tech tycoon. But it never came. She simply treated him like a man, a customer, nothing more. That alone made her unforgettable. As the days passed, Mark kept returning, not for the food, not even for the coffee. He returned for her. He'd time his mornings so he could sit in her section. She'd greet him with the same curious smile, one that always seemed like she knew something he didn't. Each visit chipped away at the silence he had built around his life. She spoke of her upbringing, how she came from a small trailer home on the edge of town. Her father was a mechanic, her mother a grocery clerk. They'd worked day and night just to keep the lights on. Jennifer had started waitressing at 16, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Still, she didn't complain. Instead, she shared dreams, big, bright, impossible ones. She wanted to become a nurse, help people who were hurting, bring comfort where there was pain. "Not everyone has money," she once said, looking down at her notepad, "but everyone deserves kindness." Mark felt something stir inside him, a warmth he hadn't felt in years. She wasn't trying to impress him. She didn't flirt. She didn't ask what he did for a living. And when he tried to pay with $100 bills, she wrinkled her nose and said, "You got change for that, or are you trying to show off?" It was the first time someone called him out without fear or greed. One day he asked, "Why don't you leave this place?" Jennifer shrugged. "Not everyone gets to leave, but I will. Someday, when I've earned it." That word earned clung to him like perfume. They started talking about small things. Books she loved, her obsession with stars, her fear of swimming, how she hated winter but loved hot chocolate. He found himself laughing again, smiling without forcing it. He watched her laugh with elderly customers, pour extra syrup for kids without charging, give her own scarf to a homeless man outside. She lived simply, but with more soul than anyone he had ever known. Mark realized something dangerous was happening. He was no longer pretending, no longer playing a role. He was falling. He began to worry. What happens when she finds out who I really am? Will she leave like all the others? Will she change? But something in her smile, that mysterious, quiet smile, kept him hoping. For the first time in years, Mark Watson wasn't chasing power, profits, or praise. He was chasing Jennifer, and he didn't even know yet just how much she would change his life. 3 weeks had passed since Mark first walked into the diner. 3 weeks of coffee, conversations, and a growing bond that neither of them dared to name. Jennifer had become the highlight of his mornings, the calm in his storm, the only person who saw him, not the billionaire, not the empire, but just Mark. He hadn't told her the truth yet about who he was. He was afraid. Afraid that once she knew, things would change. The magic would vanish. The walls she let down would rise again. But even with that fear in his chest, he knew he couldn't stay away. So one chilly evening, he took a breath and asked her, "Would you like to have dinner with me at the cabin?" Jennifer blinked, surprised. Then, after a moment, her lips curled into that mysterious smile. "Sure, as long as you're not serving diner pancakes again." He chuckled. "I'll try to impress you." That night, he cleaned every corner of the cabin like a nervous teenager. He set a small wooden table near the fireplace, lit real candles, and played soft music from his old record player. He didn't hire a chef. He didn't call in a fancy meal. He wanted to cook himself, terrible as he was at it, because he wanted the night to be real. When Jennifer arrived, she wore a simple navy blue dress and a nervous smile that melted him. She looked beautiful, naturally beautiful, The kind of beauty that didn't scream for attention but simply existed. "I brought wine," she said, holding up a bottle of cheap red. "Hope you're not too fancy for it." He grinned. "Tonight I'm just a man who burns garlic." And burn it he did. She laughed as he fumbled with pots and added too much salt. "Let me help before you poison us both." Together, they made pasta. Messy, uneven, perfectly imperfect pasta. Flour got on her nose. Sauce splashed on his shirt. But they laughed through it, side by side in a tiny kitchen that felt warmer than any ballroom he'd ever eaten in. When they finally sat down to eat, it wasn't the food that filled them up. It was the presence, the knowing glances, the pauses between bites where neither of them wanted to speak because the silence was just right. They talked for hours. She shared stories of her childhood, good and bad. He shared moments he'd never told anyone about how he lost himself in the chase for success, about how lonely it felt to be worshipped but never known. Then there was a long pause, a soft gaze, a spark in the air neither could deny anymore. He reached across the table, gently took her hand, and whispered, "You make me feel like I'm human again." Jennifer swallowed hard, her cheeks flushed. "You make me feel like I matter." Their lips met in the softest kiss. Not rushed, not forced, just a quiet surrender to everything they'd both been holding back. The kiss deepened. His hands trembled slightly as they touched her face. She leaned in closer, her breath shaky against his skin. The world fell away. The fire crackled, the candles flickered, and their hearts beat like drums of fate. As he picked her up gently and carried her to the bedroom, he paused at the door and whispered, "Are you sure?" She looked into his eyes, full of trust, and nodded. "I've never been more sure." In the soft glow of moonlight pouring through the window, they became one. Carefully, slowly. Every touch filled with respect. Every breath shared. But then, something unexpected. Afterward, as he got up to grab a blanket, his eyes fell on the white sheets. There it was, blood. He froze. Not because he was scared, but because he knew what it meant. Jennifer looked down, then quickly turned her face away. Her voice was barely audible. "I've never been with anyone before." Her shoulders tensed, her fingers pulled at the edge of the sheet, as if trying to hide. Mark stared at her, not with judgment, but with awe. She had trusted him, with her body, with her heart, with something she had never given away to anyone. He swallowed hard. In that moment, the man who had closed himself off for years felt everything break open inside him. This wasn't just a night. It was a gift, a turning point, a miracle. He reached for her gently, cupping her face in his hands. "Jennifer, I didn't know. But now that I do, I'm honored. I mean it. You're beyond special." Tears welled up in her eyes. "You're not disappointed?" He kissed her forehead and whispered, "No, I'm humbled." They laid there in silence, bodies close, hearts closer. For once, the powerful billionaire wasn't in control, love was. The room was silent, too silent. Jennifer laid beside him, her heart fluttering between peace and fear. Her cheeks were still warm from his touch, her body still trembling from the intimacy they had just shared. She expected comfort, maybe a whispered, "I love you," or at least an embrace to make the moment last. But instead she felt the bed shift. Mark had sat up. He wasn't reaching for her. He wasn't even looking at her. He stood quietly, almost too gently, and began to pull on his shirt. Jennifer's smile faded. "Did I do something wrong?" Her voice cracked. Mark didn't answer at first. He moved to the edge of the room, hands in his pockets, facing the window where the moonlight spilled in like truth. He looked lost, like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, trying to decide whether to jump or walk away. Finally, he turned to her. His eyes weren't cold. They were filled with conflict. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said softly. "You did everything right." "Then why are you pulling away?" she whispered, her voice breaking. He took a deep breath and walked back to her, crouching beside the bed. He reached for her hand, holding it like it was made of porcelain. "Because you gave me something precious tonight, and I didn't earn it. I didn't deserve it. Not yet." She stared at him, confused and aching. "You're too special to be just another memory," he continued, voice thick with emotion. "You trusted me with something sacred, and all I've given you in return is a lie." Jennifer blinked. "What do you mean?" "I haven't told you who I really am," he said. "What I do, what kind of life I live, because I was scared that the moment you knew, everything would change." He stood again, pulling on his coat. Jennifer clutched the sheets to her chest, tears forming now. "So what is this, then? Just another night for you?" "No," he said firmly. "That's the point. It's not. It's the first night in years that's meant something, and I won't cheapen it by pretending I can love you fully while hiding who I am." His words were honest. They didn't soothe her, but they respected her. She tried to stay strong, but a single tear slipped down her cheek. "So what now?" "I need to become the man you deserve," Mark whispered. "Not just a man with money or charm, but a man worthy of your first time, your trust, your dreams." He picked up her coat, helped her dress, and drove her home in silence. The air between them was heavy, not with anger, but with longing, unspoken questions, unfinished sentences. When they reached her porch, she turned to him, voice trembling. "Are you leaving for good?" Mark's jaw tightened. "No, but I need time. To make things right. To come back with my truth in my hands." He kissed her hand slowly, with reverence, not lust. Then he left without another word. The next morning, Jennifer sat on her porch in the same coat he had helped her into, staring at the road. She waited, but he didn't come. She went to the diner, working her shift with red eyes and forced smiles. Every time the door opened, her heart jumped. Maybe it's him, but it never was. One day passed, then 3, then a full week. Mark had vanished. Jennifer told herself to forget him, to be strong. "He's just another man who got scared and ran," she told herself. But no matter how much she tried to believe it, her heart wouldn't let go. She didn't know what he was doing, or why he left without a promise. All she had was the memory of that night, his voice, his touch, his eyes when he looked at her like she was something more than beautiful. She was heartbroken, yes, but she wasn't broken. Somewhere deep down, even through the pain, she held on to one quiet hope. Maybe he left, so he could come back right. 2 months had passed since the night Jennifer gave her heart to Mark Watson. 64 sunsets had come and gone. Each one she watched alone. Each one she thought of him. He had vanished from her life like a ghost with warm hands and honest eyes. No texts, no visits, not even a goodbye letter. She tried to hate him. She tried to believe he was just another man who ran when things got too real. But no matter how many times she whispered to herself, "He left," her heart replied, "But not forever." Jennifer buried herself in work at the diner. Extra shifts, double shifts, anything to stop her thoughts. Her co-workers noticed the change. She smiled less, laughed softer, and never talked about the man in the flannel shirt who used to sit in booth 7. But every time someone opened the diner door, her eyes still flicked up in hope, and every time it wasn't him. Until one quiet Thursday evening. She was wiping down a table when her manager walked over, holding a small white envelope and a brown box wrapped in ribbon. "Hey, Jen," he said gently. "Some guy dropped this off for you. Said it was important." Her heart stuttered. Her fingers trembled as she took the envelope. The handwriting on the front was neat. Familiar. "Mark!" Her breath caught. She dropped onto a booth seat, hands shaking as she opened the box first. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was an old-fashioned skeleton key. Not to a house. To something bigger. She opened the envelope next. The letter was written in his hand, smooth, steady, vulnerable. "Jennifer, I've been working on something. Something for you, for us. For the future you once told me about. The one you thought you'd never reach. I bought the old town clinic. The one that's been abandoned for years. I'm rebuilding it. Every brick, every hallway. It'll be a free medical center, the kind this town has always needed. I named it Jennifer's Hope. I want you to run it one day. I've paid for your college, nursing school, full tuition, room, books, everything. I already enrolled you. You just have to say yes. I spoke to the dean myself. You start in 2 months if you're willing. I'll wait, however long it takes. I don't want your body, Jennifer. I want your heart, your mind, your whole self, when you're ready. Love? Mark. She didn't even finish the letter before the tears came. The diner blurred into colors as her hands trembled, clutching the paper like it was life itself. Her lips quivered, her chest rising and falling like waves crashing against a broken dam. He hadn't forgotten her. He hadn't left her. He had been building something, in silence, in secret. Something beautiful, something permanent. She clutched the key to her chest, sobbing quietly in the back booth. A few diners stared, confused, but her manager simply gave her space, wiping down a counter and pretending not to see. Jennifer whispered into the paper, her voice breaking, "Why would you do all this for me?" And the answer was right there in ink. Because he didn't want a moment, he wanted forever. That night, she walked to the edge of town where the old clinic stood, or where it used to stand. Now, steel beams had risen like hope from the dirt. Fresh brick lined the base. New glass shone in the windows. The sign wasn't up yet, but she could see the outline in the frame. Jennifer's Hope Community Care Center. She cried again, this time with a heart full, not of pain but of purpose. He had loved her silently, not with grand speeches or media attention, but with action, with respect, with patience. She didn't know where Mark was that night, but she knew what he had left behind was more powerful than presence. He had given her freedom, and somehow that kind of love breaks every wall. Jennifer kept the letter in her nightstand and the key on a chain around her neck. The very next day, she called the college registrar and confirmed her place. Nursing school began 2 months later, and with it, a chapter she never believed would belong to her. She left her small town quietly. No goodbye parties, no dramatic farewells, just a girl with a bag of books, a beating heart, and a fire inside her that no struggle had been able to burn out. Mark didn't try to stop her. He didn't demand updates. He didn't chase. But he did write, every Sunday. Sometimes a paragraph, sometimes pages. Always handwritten, always folded neatly and mailed without return addresses. She wrote back. And slowly, in the soft space between paper and ink, their love grew roots, deeper, stronger, unshakable. He visited now and then, always respectful. He never crossed a line, never rushed her, never expected anything except her presence. They'd walk for hours around campus, talk about her classes, her patients, her fears. He'd beam like a proud parent when she showed him her first set of scrubs. She was building something, and he was letting her. That was love. 2 years later, Jennifer walked out of her final exam with tears in her eyes. Not because she was scared. Because she'd done it. She was now a nurse. Not because of luck, not because of handouts. Because someone believed in her, and she worked like hell to honor that. She returned to her hometown the next day. The sky was clear, the streets unchanged. But as her car turned onto the familiar road, her eyes widened. There, standing strong and proud, was the clinic, her clinic. The sign gleamed under the sun. Jennifer's Hope Community Care Center, a place where people, regardless of race, wealth, or past, could walk through the door and receive kindness, care, and dignity. And there he was. Mark Watson, in jeans and a flannel shirt, standing at the top of the clinic steps, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. No cameras, no bodyguards, just a man with hope in his eyes and love in his hands. Jennifer ran to him, tears spilling down her cheeks before she could even speak. He dropped the flowers and caught her in his arms like they were made to hold each other. They kissed, slow, deep, and full of the time they'd spent apart. No longer a spark of passion. This kiss was earned, built on respect, sacrifice, and a foundation of truth. They didn't say, "I love you" in that moment. They didn't need to. The wedding happened 1 month later, under a tree behind the clinic, where sunlight danced through leaves and laughter rose like music. No press releases, just family, close friends, and townspeople who had watched something real grow in front of them. Jennifer wore a simple white dress. Mark wore the same flannel shirt he met her in, pressed and clean. They exchanged vows barefoot in the grass. No gold, no diamonds, just promises. Afterward, they served homemade food, laughed with neighbors, and danced to an old song on a broken radio. And the town, once small, once quietly divided by income and skin, began to change too. Because love doesn't just heal people, it heals communities. Mark used his wealth not for attention, but for impact. He created scholarships for low-income families, hired single mothers, offered medical aid to undocumented workers, funded art and music programs for kids who'd never had crayons of their own, and he never once put his name on any of it. People who once whispered about the rich man who ran off with the waitress soon found themselves grateful for the kindness they never saw coming. And Jennifer? She ran that clinic like a lighthouse, calm, fierce, open to all. She treated everyone, from the janitor to the mayor, with the same steady compassion, because she knew what it meant to be invisible. And she swore no one would feel that way on her watch. Years later, a plaque was placed at the clinic's front gate. It didn't list donors or sponsors. Just one quote: "The richest hearts are the ones that give without needing to be seen." Love had broken every wall, and in its place it built something unshakable.